This is the Fixer Punk Podcast, the podcast that, like Wembley Stadium record-setting band Fozzy would say, says, burn me out. I'm Grayson Peltier. This is a Fixing the Fixer Punk episode, and this is the first time we are doing one of these episodes as a live stream on TikTok. And today, I actually wanted to reflect on a few things. It's been a while. I think that I'm about a week or so late of doing a Fixing the Fixer Punk episode, but these are the episodes, for those of you who are not familiar, where I discuss insights from my own personal life and bring them back to help us understand social change as well, because we do bridge the divide between personal and social change here on this podcast. So, what I'm looking at right now in terms of my own personal life is a few things. So the goal here, and I actually said this in the beginning of the year, my New Year's resolution was, I used the Young Bucks phrase, killing the business. It's to try to create a new way of looking at business, looking at finance, looking at ways to make money. And unfortunately, I feel like I am kind of failing at that. And I'm at a point right now where I am looking at having to do a more of a normal type job, not necessarily in advocacy. I have my political and advocacy communications consulting practice, Offspeed Solutions. You can go to offspeedsolutions.com. There's a link on the fixerpunk.com website as well to that, where I consult on social media, culture, marketing, all aspects of communications for political and advocacy purposes. Unfortunately, the overall level, as I've mentioned, I think it's probably a couple months ago back in episodes, but there's been a major decline in the amount of donation money that is going into progressive organizations and nonprofit organizations in general, because of what has happened in the economy. So things are definitely a bit slower. So that may be that's definitely a bit of a burden on me. I've kind of set aside ever since about December of last year to try to make this podcast grow and to try to improve myself physically, mentally, every way possible. But there have been a bunch of things that have just gotten in the way. And one of the things that I've been figuring out is I've been questioning this. And as I was on the road, headed back from this job interview, which this new job I'm going to start is not necessarily ideal, but it's okay. It's good enough. And I'm still in consideration, still going for opportunities that are closer to the political and advocacy space in progressive activism, still going for things in the business and trying to keep this podcast going as well. Like I said, burn me out. Trying to achieve all of my goals all at once in one fell swoop while making money. And that is crazy for me, but I know that other people do it like all the time. And I guess it's just my ADHD, my autism, the autistic burnout. I had COVID earlier on this year, and I think I was probably more sick than you would have expected for someone my age with that for a while. But I kept getting disrupted, and also I have family, personal life stuff that comes up, things like that conflict with goals. And especially as someone with autism, it's very easy to get just kind of knocked back in terms of your goals, like with some little change that happens. And then of course, there are things that you could do. I feel like I need a lot of very personal, one-on-one accountability, things that are a bit more, they're a bit more intensive in terms of therapy or coaching, stuff like that, so that I can keep myself motivated, so I can stay on track with my goals. What I really regret is not having a really good plan. When I saw that my business was going to, after the 2022 election, kind of drop down naturally, I didn't necessarily have the best plan in place. I kind of had a plan mentally, but I deviated from it, I guess. And when little things come up and everyday life feels like a job, that was when I first committed to doing once a week, the first episode I did back in December was the everyday life feels like a full-time job. Thankfully, things have gotten better for me, and I'm just going to keep trying to push myself, improve my mental endurance as best as possible because I kind of have to. But that happens quite a bit for me is that. And then just like when I was leaving that interview again, I again lost my train of thought. A quote from Bryan Danielson, AEW pro wrestler, kept coming into my mind. It actually, the quote, the real source of the quote, I believe, is a guy named, and I know I'm probably going to botch the name, Paulo Coelho. And it's, if you fight for your dreams will fight for you. And I was like, okay, I set aside this time in my life. Did I really fight hard enough for my dreams? And then it came to me over time. I thought about this because it feels like, especially if you're dealing with issues of, if you're in any sort of oppressed intersectional group, then you feel like the world is fighting you. And frankly, with the way that the economic systems are structured, with the way that capitalism is structured, with the way our political system is structured, and I know this from experience, the world is in a way fighting you. But the thing is that what you have to keep in mind is not just your own personal journey, because it's very easy to, and this is something that I'm almost saying this to myself. But as I go into the possibility of like making money and sticking with that type of stuff, instead of doing this type of advocacy content, which I'm going to keep going, and I might actually paradoxically have more content coming soon here. But as I focus on that, it's not just about fighting for my own dreams. It's about fighting for the world that you dream of. And then when you fight for the world that you dream of, the world will fight for you. And that's right now what we're experiencing right now with late stage capitalism. That is what the corporate ruling class really wants. The people on the right, the people that are basically costing us every bit of social change that we were able to get through the COVID pandemic, trying to roll it back and call us all lazy and ridiculous and get rid of return to office or cause return to office, stuff like that. The world is set up to fight for those who are already in power. And that's what they want. And that's why they always get what they want, is because the world is fighting for them. But when you create social change, when you actually do things collectively, then, and thank you for the likes on the live stream. This is going to be a little different again. For those of you listening on the podcast, this episode's definitely going to be a little different. But when that happens, when the world starts to change politically, when we made those changes during the COVID pandemic because politicians suddenly realized that helping people and giving them the money that they needed to survive through a once-in-a-lifetime pandemic was a good idea. They finally woke up on a bipartisan level and said that. And the world started to shift a little bit towards fighting for us. And that's how how a lot of people have been able to improve their lives, improve their situation financially. People have been able to add savings. Yes, there are a lot of people that didn't do so well through the pandemic economically, but people have been able to rack up savings, get better conditions in jobs. We're seeing unions and strikes at the highest levels we've seen in a very long time. And it's not from strictly pulling up your own bootstraps. It is because you've decided, or people collectively have decided, that we are going to fight for a better world. And that better world will fight for you and for your dreams and your goals. So, yes, on an individual level, if you fight for your own dreams and you fight for what you want, and caveat there, not for what you don't want, not for, because I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to be probably working a lot harder for whatever job I have than I have on trying to make this podcast work. And why is that? I am using more energy and more of my my ambition for something that isn't exactly my dream. Now, there are some opportunities coming up that would be dream opportunities. Some opportunities that would be with other podcasts, other types of media content creation, and those things absolutely 100% that's going toward my dream. But why would I not do that? Why would I fight harder for something that isn't my dream rather than something that is? And that is a question that I am asking myself. And a lot of times we get into this weird relationship in the workplace where we have a collective action problem. I was reading a thread on Reddit about software engineers possibly doing a strike to achieve permanent work from home. And this is the classic collective action problem that we talk about in political science. They're all saying, well, I can negotiate for better terms with my employer. Work from home is not essential. This is something that is for people that are good workers, good hard workers that can, I guess, kiss up to the boss enough to get their work from home privileges. Whereas if you were to unionize, you could work collectively and you fight for that better world rather than just for yourself. It makes those things. It enables you to have that work from home, to have those better conditions, to have that better pay. Somebody asked to join the live. I am not taking any of those because it doesn't come through on the podcast. On the podcast, it's not going to be able to record. I don't have a mixer board in here, which if you want to help me out with that, then you can gift through the through TikTok, or I am going to be at the end of the episode talking about a Patreon that will be coming up soon, and you'll be able to see that through the fixerpunk.com website. But back to the main topic, this collective action problem in terms of unionizing, where people think, oh yeah, I should just get what's mine. But that's not a long-term sustainable strategy. That's because at some point you're going to be, or in relation to somebody, you're going to have less power than somebody else. And you're going to need that type of support from a union and from your fellow man to be able to get to what you want. And we have to keep that instinct at bay of not focusing on others and just focusing on ourselves, because that will actually not make your life better. It'll make your life worse over time, because the conditions in society are not going to be conducive to you achieving your goals. And we have this terrible thing. What we're seeing right now is that with capitalism, the way it is right now, economic conditions are dictating basic humanity in terms of people getting a living wage, getting a wage that they need to be able to afford housing, food, transportation to even get to work. That's one of the big things with work from home is that people have been able to get jobs that pay them well without having to pay a ton in transportation. There are some job opportunities that I saw out there, and because unfortunately I don't drive, one of the things that I neglected to do earlier on in this process of this time off was to go and get my driver's license, which I am working on. I have my permit for it. I was planning at some point after I graduated college, I thought I was going to be in a city, wouldn't need to drive as much public transit, but it turns out I'm here in the suburbs, and to get anywhere, to get to work on time is going to take an Uber that's going to cost, sometimes with some of these jobs and what they pay, it's like 50% of your salary. So it doesn't even make sense. And that drives income inequality. I discussed that on a prior video on the TikTok at FixerPunk. So take a look at what we have on the page there. But economic conditions should not dictate basic humanity. It shouldn't be that, okay, well, recession happened, or we just changed some numbers in the interest rate, and now employers can treat employees like crap now. Now employers don't have to accommodate people with disabilities. Now employers don't have to pay you a fair wage. They don't have to give you benefits. And that's why public policy change is needed. Individual solutions don't work on their own. And that's why the powerful will always influence politics, and they don't want you to act collectively. They wouldn't do those anti-union trainings at workplaces if unions didn't work to actually help you get better conditions in the workplace. And we rely way too much for our ability to just do things that should be fundamental rights under a civilized society, we rely way too much on the economic numbers and what they say. It really should not be that way. The economic numbers, maybe you can decide certain things, but there's more than enough resources. There's more than enough money in this economy. It's just a matter of will. We saw that through the COVID pandemic with the assistance. We saw the closest thing to universal basic income, and it reduced childhood poverty drastically with the child tax credit. But now that's gone because we have to somehow correct the economy. We have to correct inflation. But no, these are all decisions that are made on a collective basis. And that's why the powerful want to influence politics, and they don't want you to act collectively. They'll act collectively. You won't. And that's what they hope for. And on that same line of money not necessarily and the economy not equating what is needed for people, this is why I really supported universal basic income. Universal basic income, in a way, obviously we're going to talk about it in the context of like AI, things like that. We're going to talk about how it's going to help with technological unemployment. Seeing a lot of people in the chat. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining here. I really appreciate it. But what I think we don't talk enough about is that universal basic income compensates people for the very important work that is not done for capitalists. Things like raising children, things like caring for an elderly family member or just somebody who's sick, helping out on like a volunteer basis. People edit Wikipedia for free. It doesn't always require a financial incentive, but we need money to eat and we need money to live. So you'll have people who are doing some of the most important work in society and they're not being paid anything for it. They're not being paid enough for it, or they're helping a family member, they're helping people out, they're doing things that are necessary and they're not getting a dime for it. They're working harder than sometimes a lot of these executive people that are basically just collecting off of other people's labor, or really the owner class, not necessarily the like management class. That's a whole different discussion. The managerial class is a very nuanced discussion, and I think they're a lot closer to labor than they are to capital. I think workers who don't own means of production, that's labor, basically. But what I do want to bring up is that as somebody who has been doing a good amount of stuff that isn't compensated in the capitalistic sense, and I took a break from work from like my some of the work that I did in my business because of that natural sort of dip in revenue that comes in the political business after an election cycle. When you do wind up, because you're tired of capitalism and the way that your employer treats you, you wind up taking a break from work and you want to do something different, you have to be very intentional about it or things will spiral out of control. And the first thing is to not undervalue your own time, and your own time in terms of not necessarily just like an hour of time, an hour of work, but like your time in terms of how long that you're waiting for something to come along in your life. If you are trying to like improve your mental health, or you're trying to improve something in your, in terms of starting a business, yes, patience is a virtue. You need to be patient for some of these things. But if you know something's not working, something's not helping, then you need to know when to pivot away from it. Because I would spend, this is one of the mistakes I made, is that because of the fact that I felt this fear, of course, always, and the fact that other people would also give me advice and tell me, well, just hold on to as much of your money as possible. Had I spent more of my money, I spent more of my money earlier on trying to pursue my dreams, more of my money going into fighting for my dreams, rather than waiting around and waiting for the world to basically make my life worse, I could have been in a better position. Had I spent the money on like some specialized coaching, things for my business, things like that early on, back 6-8 months ago, I might be in a different position. I may not have to be going into a job that may not be ideal. But I just kept thinking, let me just keep doing things the cheap way. Let me just keep doing things the cheap way in terms of my autism, my ADHD treatment. I kept trying to go through insurance. I kept trying to do the more affordable treatments, the stuff that the therapist that I could get through insurance rather than paying for somebody out of pocket that might actually do a really, really much better job. And that's one of the big conundrums when you have like the more of the executive functioning mental health things like ADHD or autism, is that a lot of therapists don't really understand how to help them, especially when your problems are around like energy and organization, motivation, stuff like that, rather than strictly like an anxiety or a depression, which is like the standard stuff that they deal with using cognitive behavioral therapy. You want to get the right things that you want to do going sooner. There's some time to rest, take a break. You want to get the right things going sooner rather than later. The things that you want to do building toward the life you want to have sooner rather than later, and get all the right stuff, the right people in place sooner, because waiting a month to save a little bit of money maybe is not worth it. You have to think about how much money, how much lost opportunity you have in a month, 2 months, 3 months. And don't just let it go. Don't just let the time pass by, because I'm like a month or day or a week, those things just pass by so quickly, especially when you have ADD, you have time blindness. That passes real quickly, and it definitely becomes a bit of a problem, because then you just keep waiting because you're saving money. You're thinking, okay, this is the right thing for me to do. But no, you are in fact costing yourself money. So don't undervalue your own time. Get the right things going sooner. And don't keep spending your time or money on things that aren't helping you and your specific situation. There's so many programs like around, like especially for like mental health or like these apps for meditation and for motivation and stuff like that, and they cost a lot of money, and they're monthly subscriptions. I have like so many charges on my credit card for things like that. I typically get them under control pretty quickly. Like I track using the Rocket Money app. But stop spending time and money on things that aren't working. If you know this isn't helping you, again, patience is important. But if you know something's not helping you, then you need to change it out. You need to change something, because the more time you wait, the worse things get. And you need to speak up if something isn't working. Be ready to advocate for yourself, for the world that you want, for what you want to have happen, rather than just getting yourself the bare minimum. For the world that you dream of and for the life that you dream of, you want to speak up for those things. Speak up if something isn't working the way you want it to. If your mental health treatment, whatever, isn't working properly, you need to have that conversation and not be afraid to have that conversation. And you want to try a lot of things that might work a bit better. Maybe they're maybe not conventional. Get multiple opinions. What I've realized is when you're dealing with like autism or neurodivergence, ADHD, stuff like that, when you go to like these, a lot of times like normal therapists, especially the ones through insurance, it's like, there's a quote from a baseball player, CJ, we're not confirmed that it's CJ Wilson that said it, but he was tweeted about this, interesting Twitter thread about Angels baseball. I'm an Angels fan, and yes, that is a very sad thing to be an Angels fan, because the Angels aren't doing very well. They're wasting Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani. And somebody in an article, I forgot which sports news outlet had the article, but they said that the way that the Angels treated like their players' health and player development like that was like taking a McLaren to Jiffy Lube. And sometimes it feels like that when you're dealing with like insurance-based therapists that aren't as well informed on autism or ADHD or neurodivergence. It's you're taking a McLaren to Jiffy Lube. It's not going to work the way you want it to. You don't have the people who know how to deal with all of the internal components that are involved. Now, I've done some stuff on my own, tried to find ways that would improve my situation independently. I spoke in the last episode about like protocols, like the Andrew Hubermans of the world. Actually, that might have been a couple episodes ago. like Andrew Huberman and like a lot of these like self-optimization type protocols. I experimented with some of them, really had very little impact. Some of them were kind of even detrimental a little bit. Like they actually made me feel a little bit worse. So like I would get up, I would try to like go outside in the sunlight, try to, unfortunately then the sunlight stuff unfortunately hurts my eyes a little bit. That became problematic. Trying to do a cold shower, couldn't really tolerate it that much. It almost gave me like a panic attack when I did it. And then of course like breathing and meditation in the morning maybe helped a little bit, but not that much. And for some reason I managed to waste a ton of time in between those things because I felt like I needed to recover, because that's how like slow I get. So those like protocols weren't as effective as I wanted them to be. And I think I should probably just start updating here, because I haven't updated in a month on like my overall health and fitness journey. Now that I'm in a situation with a job where I'm going to have to return to the office, I'm like, oh my God, I'm already kind of tired, but it's like, how am I going to keep up with my workout routine and then eating habits? I found all kinds of like interesting ways of like adjusting my eating habits and making sure that I was eating healthier, even though I don't necessarily like a lot of like foods that they're like the more conventionally healthy things. I found like all kinds of adaptations. I think a couple episodes ago I mentioned how like I used to eat like tons and tons of sweets, and I've replaced those with like Fiber One brownies and the Catalina Crunch cereal, which unfortunately when I went to Costco, that Catalina Crunch cereal wasn't around. But I've kind of set up like my eating habits to work with me working from home. And now that I'm going to the office, I don't know what I'm going to have there in terms of like refrigeration and all of that, having to go into the office. My bad eating habits are starting to come back. I'm like, okay, I'm going to buy like all kinds of like random little things that I can take with me, snacks, stuff like that, that may not be as healthy for me. And I'm just going to pack those with me because I know I'm going to need them because I'm going to be stressed out and we want to eat. And it's been giving me like, I know I should be doing better. I know I should be like meal prepping things fully, but you get very exhausted. People get very exhausted. Just the number of hours somebody has as free time is not really their free time. There's a difference between having time and having time that you can totally set aside for something. Like even doing this like live recording, like I have all kinds of weird brief moments of like 15, 20 minutes in the middle of the day where I have time to do things, but it's not a set aside amount of time that I can just set everything aside for. I don't necessarily have a set aside time to do meal prepping and stuff like that too, even though I have random little periods of time. So you have to be mindful of disturbances as well when you're saying it's time to do something, especially something important. Be in a position where you can, where you don't have as many potential distractions. And then of course a lot of these like food adaptations that I've done, like switching out to like healthier, higher fiber, high protein breads, switching out to those Fiber One brownies, to the protein bars. There are these no sugar meta bars from Costco that I really like. I'll sometimes buy like the Smart Ones frozen meals too. A lot of like the lower calorie food alternatives are going to be more expensive than the less healthy stuff. Like I could buy a giant box of granola bars at Costco, like the very regular kind, for like $7-8, whereas like I think about like 16 of those Fiber One brownies, which are going to be more nutrition, more fiber, and lower calories, so more satisfying. Those actually cost me like $10 something or $10-12, I think, and that's at Walmart. And I remember I used to buy those big packages of Oreos from Walmart. They're like $2, and then replacing them with the healthier, higher fiber, higher protein stuff, that's like going up to like $10. So now that I may not need to be, we're shifting out of like summer's done, shifting out of the season where you're going to the beach and pools and stuff like that. It's now pretty much officially bulking season in terms of fitness. I don't know if I'm ready there yet. I always have a small amount of body fat that I just can't really take off. But I've realized that even though you're eating more calories like during bulking, it's better financially because all the lower calorie, lower carb alternatives that you have to do to try to get yourself through like a calorie deficit, those are all going to be more expensive than like the regular stuff. So bulking season, especially if you're going dirty bulk, is going to be cheaper and better financially. So I'll have now with working and less debt. Hopefully what happens is I'm able to keep up the pace with the workouts, which honestly, people, I have to say, if you can get through workouts, and go to like a full-time job, more power to you. It's like, to me, I just, as somebody with autism, with neurodivergence, I'm like, okay, the first thing that's going to fall off, even though I absolutely love doing it, yeah, I enjoy it, I really want to keep going to the gym, it's like, I feel like that's going to unfortunately fall to the wayside. And I'm a little bit scared of that. So hopefully as I increase calories unintentionally, one of the app subscriptions I paid for was MyFitnessPal, which I hate the fact that I had to pay $80 just to get the barcode scanner thing back. But it is what it is. The money's paid, money's gone for that $80 for a year of MyFitnessPal. Haven't used it as much as I should have. Hopefully I'll even have the cognitive bandwidth to track food, but hopefully at least I'll be getting into the gym and lifting heavy enough that it's not all going to become fat as I'm increasing my calories because I'm decreasing the cost of what I'm spending on food. New motto around here in terms of personal and social changes: nothing changes you like material conditions do. There's no amount of motivation or will or gumption that will change your ability to achieve your goals, whether that's finance, whether that's fitness, whether that's business, whether that's your personal goals, your mental health goals, like material conditions do. Material conditions will change those things way better and way more effectively than anything that you could do on your own. And that's why I say, if you fight for the world that you dream of, the world will fight for you, and the world will fight for your dreams as we create a better world for ourselves where we have enough money that we can actually pursue doing better in our own personal lives. So to try to hold myself accountable and to keep myself going, at least on the fitness journey stuff, I was supposed to do this morning. I did not. Sadly, I was waking up already pretty tired today on a Sunday. I am going to create like an account, probably an Instagram account that's going to be dedicated to like my overall my fitness journey, with like weekly posts and follow up specifically on that to try to build a separate brand. And I think I've decided on the name for it. Based on, actually, I think it was the last Fixing the Fixer Punk episode. I talked about how my fitness goal was always to try to, because I live in Southern California near the beach, but I never really, I was a bodyboarder. I had some lessons in surfing, but never really pursued it. My goal was always just to get myself to a point where I looked good in board shorts. So the name for that project, the fitness project, is probably known as the Board Shorts Project. I will, once that is up, that will get posted onto the fixerpunk.com website and into the podcast feed and into all the social media. But that's going to be where I'm going to be posting more fitness-related stuff to try to keep myself accountable and open up some other brands as well, so that I have some alternate content brands to bring in, possibly bring in some more revenue through content, which I wasn't as intentional about because I'm trying to grow the audience. I want to make sure I'm giving you value to help improve your lives and learn about ways to create social and political change to help improve the lives of others. But of course, we have to make money somehow. may be a job for me right now. But I'm hoping it can become this, the podcast, live streaming, all of these things. I'm still going to try to keep going on all of those fronts. And I want you to come with me on this journey. Of course, follow, subscribe, make sure that you subscribe for the emails for the podcast. If you have any personal stories you want to share, things that relate to the theme of this episode, or any situations you're dealing with, that policies that need to change, you're dealing with bad bosses. I was a part of the whole Street Fight Radio show. I was a relatively regular caller to that show between like 2021 up until when they wrapped up late last year. And that show would always have like tons of call-ins of people talking about their life, talking about random things that happened to them, talking about a lot of union organizing, progressive political activism, and problems with jobs and bosses, and figuring out ways to improve conditions in the workplace through organizing, and also just having fun, some comedy about the problems in the workplace. And I am looking to kind of do that type of stuff through the live stream as well. I have a call-in phone number that I've promoted quite a bit, 844-477-PUNK, 844-477-7865. Any feedback you have, any stories you want to tell, leave a message on there. I want to hear from you, 844-477-7865. And the Patreon is going to be coming soon as well. And that is not up yet, but it will go on the TikTok. It'll go on the podcast website, on the podcast feed, and on the fixerpunk.com website. First offer is going to be just $1 a month for ad-free versions of the podcast, because there are ads on the normal feed. And then that gives you a 10% off most of my regularly priced, political and advocacy communications consulting and advocacy coaching services, which are helpful for if you have an organization or a campaign that you're running. I have a lot of experience figuring out ways to communicate your message in ways that get around the natural cognitive dissonance that people have around changing their views politically, ways to effectively get your message out through social media, through the internet, through conventional media, and also helping you if you have an issue that you want to gain awareness of, to get that into the public eye. And also, if you have a business and you're looking for help with promoting or marketing online or offline, I've done a lot of that type of consulting work, and that is something that I offer through Offspeed Solutions on the offspeedsolutions.com website. But if you sign up for the Patreon, when the Patreon comes up, there is going to be a special offer for my consulting services as well. So keep an eye out on that. Of course, follow on TikTok at FixerPunk, FIXERPUNK, for all those updates. Also on Instagram, same username, FixerPunk. One of the other things that I want to do is create community. So once that Patreon is up, then what I want to do is create a progressive self-help, self-improvement, bridging the divide between personal and social change Discord, where we create a community around trying to help better ourselves while also improving the world, bettering ourselves in terms of our finances, mental health, lifestyle, fitness, while also advocating for a better world where people can do better and improve together and create that environment, create that world that we dream of. All of the stuff to help us fight for the world we dream of, so that the world will fight for us instead of for oppressive systems that we deal with under late-stage capitalism. So please stay updated. I hope you will join me again for the next episode or for the next live stream if you are watching on TikTok Live. Call in anytime during the week, 24/7, if you have feedback or if you have any stories you want to share, even anything funny. I'd love to hear it. 844-477-PUNK, 844-477-7865. Thank you for choosing to spend some of your time with me today.